like to welcome all of you once again to our board leadership forums, our lunch and learn sessions that we have each Wednesday. We believe we have two good topics today that will be beneficial to you as board members. Once again, I am Gary Sechrist with KUSF Leadership Services, and as always, our trusted sidekick, Sam Blasi, who is a KUSF attorney, and you will be hearing from him quite a bit. Our topic today, and we're very happy to have Mrs. Linda Berry with us today. She's with the Kansas Corporation Commission. Her actual title is Director of Public Affairs and Consumer Protection. And she is here to visit with you about a topic that I know many board members and superintendents have been concerned about, is connectivity with some homes while remote, through the remote learning environment. So we're going to give Ms. Berry the opportunity to take over the screen. She has some PowerPoint, some slides that she would like to share with you. So Linda, it is all yours, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to join you today. And the KCC feels like Lifeline's a really important program for Kansas families. And this year we've made an extended effort to reach out to educational communities and help ensure that, as all of you are doing, that people can learn in their homes and have good connectivity to the internet, have phone service to be able to contact schools and do all of those things that are so important to being successful in school. So what I'd like to do is kind of walk through the Lifeline program. It is a program that offers discounted rates on phone and internet. And it's available to people who meet income requirements. Lifeline has two aspects. It's a federal program, but many states, such as Kansas, also have a program. I believe there are 21 states currently that offer their own program as well, which is great news for Kansans, because now Kansans are eligible to receive both discounts to receive even more help with their Lifeline expenses. So nationwide, Lifeline serves about 10 million Americans. 35,000 of those are right here in Kansas. And we'd like to see that number go even higher because we know the need is there. So how much do subscribers save? The federal discount is $9.25 per month off of a phone or internet bill. The state discount adds an additional $7.77 for a total of $17.02 per month. One note to make is the federal discount can be used for phone or internet service, and the Kansas discount can only be used for phone service. However, there are some ways that you can combine those two regardless. If you have a need for internet, you can use the federal discount for your internet program and your state discount for phone. If you don't have a need for internet, you just need a phone, then you can combine the two and get $17 per month off of your phone bill. If a person lives on tribal lands, they can qualify for an additional $25 in discounts each month for a total of $34.25. And there are even some programs that help getting internet installed on tribal lands as well. And so there's information on that that we can provide as well. So in terms of qualifying, there are two different ways. Kansans who participate in any of the following public assistance programs will in most cases qualify. And so there's quite an extensive list. So if you have people in your school communities that get food assistance, Medicaid, SSI, housing assistance, any of the things listed here, they most likely will be able to qualify for Lifeline. The other way to qualify is if your income is at 135% of the poverty level. And on the slide, you can see what that income level is based on the number in the household. There is an exception this year on income qualifications. For people who are recently unemployed, their past 3 months of pay stubs or their past tax return is not going to show the fact that they're currently unemployed. So what has happened is the FCC and the KCC have both extended and waived that requirement until the end of November. So if you're recently unemployed, instead of supplying 3 months of pay stubs, you can provide an official document such as your eligibility for unemployment benefits and qualify for the program. And that again lasts until the end of November, and we feel will be very helpful for people who've lost their job over the past few months and need to qualify in order to do those important things like apply for new jobs, contact doctors, keep in touch with their families, and all the things that are so vital to being part of the community. There are 3 steps to subscribing. The first is qualifying, and there is a new way to qualify that just became available in Kansas over the past year, and that's through the National Verifier. And what the National Verifier does is it keeps a database of people in every state who are currently receiving public assistance from one of the programs that were listed on the previous slide. So by going online, completing your information, you can find out in a matter of minutes if you qualify or not. This verifier helps with making that process easier. It also helps prevent fraud. So there are a lot of benefits to this verifier program. For those who aren't comfortable going online and doing an application, you can print and mail an application. There's a link there to where you can download those. We also have those applications in both English and Spanish on the KCC website that can be accessed. And that's, it's a pretty easy form to fill out. But again, I think the verifier is probably by far the most simple. A lot of people with these kinds of programs, they're hesitant to apply because they think it's going to be very cumbersome. You'll have to fill out a lot of forms, mail in a lot of things. This process really isn't too bad. It's really pretty easy. And then the final way is if you have a phone or internet provider currently, you can, and you think you may apply, you may qualify for Lifeline, you can contact them and they can help you apply. They have access to the National Verifier as well, and they can help you get through that process and set you up for a program. Once you've qualified, it's a matter of choosing a phone or internet company. And once you qualify, you have 90 days to make your selection. There's a website link that will help you determine which companies in your area provide Lifeline service. And we also have that same link on the KCC website if you need to access it later on. And then the final step is to sign up for service. And the Lifeline service providers generally have several packages to choose from that you can talk with them about and determine what would meet your needs. And another slide I wanted to share with you was minimum service standards. In order to participate in Lifeline, the providers have to offer a minimum level of service. So for cell phones, it's 1,000 minutes. There are requirements around internet speed for both data plans and home internet. If you have bundled service offerings as a Lifeline provider, at least one of those services has to meet the minimum standards to qualify for the discount. And at least one of those devices has to have hotspot functionality for available data plans. So there is a minimum level of service that can be provided, and I'm sure there are higher levels as well, depending, and that would change the cost, of course. One of the things I often get asked when I talk about Lifeline is, how is the program funded? Where did it start? Who pays for it? How is that determined? So I wanted to include a little bit of history just to give you some background on it. Lifeline itself is a federal program that was established in 1985 to help low-income consumers afford phone service. In 2016, the FCC, who administers the federal program, modernized it to include broadband support. and it's funded by the Universal Service Fund. Telecom companies across the country are required to pay an assessment on their interstate revenues, and they can pass that charge along to their consumers. They're not required to, but if you see on your telephone bill a USF charge, it's usually a very small amount. That's what that's for. The Universal Service Fund, in addition to Lifeline, also supports broadband for schools, libraries, and rural healthcare clinics, and helps build infrastructure in remote and underserved areas where it would cost or be financially prohibitive for companies to want to venture out into those areas. The state program was created by the Kansas legislature in 1996. It's KUSF, it is the abbreviation for that, and telecom companies in the state pay an assessment on intrastate revenues to fund that program. And also included in KUSF funding, in addition to Lifeline, is the Kansas Relay 711 and the Telecommunications Access Program. And you may be familiar with those, but both of those provide services and equipment to people who have hearing or visual impairment so that they can communicate easily with their communities and family. And then network enhancements and upgrades in rural areas are also included. So that is a very high level overview. I'm sure there may be some questions, and if we have time, I'd be happy to answer any that you might have.
Thank you very much. This is a great opportunity for board members, any superintendents. If you have any questions for Ms. Berry, please feel free to put those in the chat. If you said this, I do apologize. One of the things it appeared to me as a former administrator that can you make a prediction that if a family qualifies for free lunch, that their chances of qualifying for this program are pretty good?
Yes, I would say they are pretty good.
Okay. Looks like we do have a question possibly. What is the turnaround on application to determine qualification into your program?
If you use the National Verifier, then you can find out almost immediately if you're qualifying on participation in an assistance program. So if you receive SNAP benefits and you go online and apply, they can tell you almost immediately. And then your next step would be to find a provider. They'll give you, the information you need to provide to that phone or internet company, but it's pretty quick. If you mail it in, it may take a little longer. And I guess the caution I would say is if for some reason you're applying and there's some question about your eligibility, you may have to supply additional documentation, particularly if it's an income, if you're trying to apply on your income. But normally it's pretty quick.
That's another question that we have. So actually it's my question. In your experience working with school districts, is it common for a school district to have take on some informal responsibility to get this information out to families? How best are some districts getting this information into the hands of the people that most need it?
I know a lot of districts supply this information to their teachers or their school counselors. We also provide this information to public service agencies so that when they're working with clients, they can suggest this as a possible resource as well. But obviously, we're trying to get this out to as many people as possible. And so we do believe there is still room. In fact, nationally, there is some projection that maybe up to 50% of the people who could qualify for Lifeline have not accessed the service. So it's really an awareness campaign that the KCC has taken on along with other public utility commissions across the country.
From Melissa, this is just more information. Melissa has attempted to get to your website during this and it says it cannot be reached. So it might be something that you want to look at when you get back, Linda. But
okay.
We do have another question from Claudia. Would the public libraries have information for the families in this? Is there people that can help fill this form out in the local communities or within your organization?
I think the public libraries do have this information, but that is a great, I'm glad you said that because that's something we can double check as well. And I know that the telephone companies within the state, whoever you're receiving service from right now, they can actually help walk you through that process and apply on your behalf over the phone. And you can also call the 800 number. We have a flyer that, I don't know if we can post that somewhere, or I think, Gary, you may have it. It does have an 800 number that people can call, and they can actually do that over the phone with someone helping them. They have someone who speaks Spanish as well, if there's a language barrier that needs some assistance.
The two documents you sent me, I'm assuming one of those is what you're referring to. We do have a question. I think we just answered it. Is there certain documents that one should have on hand that would help with the process? And Linda, if it's one of those two you sent me, I will make sure that gets in our member portal so all board members around the state will have access to that. Do you believe that document's the one that you're referring to?
Yes, I do. It's a flyer that talks about applying and what the qualifications are. But in terms of documents, if you're going to apply on income, having a tax return, your most recent tax return, or 3 months of proof of income, like a check stub or statement of some type of income, would be the most helpful. If you're, again, part of an assistance program, they can tell that through the National Verifier, and you won't have to provide proof of that.
Excellent. Well, I think I put the correct file in the chat box so that if those of you that want to download that right now definitely can, but we will put it into our member porthole. We want to make sure, are there any other questions about this valuable information that will help your students during this trying time while attempting to learn from home? Linda, thank you so much. It was great information. Looks like everybody got their questions answered. If there's any other information that you think would be valuable, if you would send it to me, I'll make sure it gets to our portal so that board members can access that to assist their families within their own districts. So you're welcome to stick around, but if we also understand that the next topic, this legal topic, may not be right down your alley, but you're welcome to stick around, and we understand if you're not. So thank you very much, Mrs. Berry.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so Sam, you have got the table. You're going to talk about some legal topics that we think would be very important to our audience today. So Sam, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Gary. I appreciate it. I'm realizing now that probably the PowerPoint slide that I have is a little bit dramatic for what we're going to talk about, but what can I say? I have a flair for the fantastic. I would like to talk about with you guys sort of the extension of the state of emergency declaration that was recently issued. You know, we were in this state of disaster declaration or emergency declaration until September 15th. Now, on September 11th, the Finance Council and Governor Kelly did agree through a vote to extend that period out until October 15th. And it's an interesting position that it's put us in, because if you remember, when Executive Order 20-59 was originally issued, that's the big mask order, there were a lot of competing legal interpretations of what it meant for school districts, for counties, who can opt out, when, where, why, and how, and then what are the legal ramifications for if you were to do so. Unfortunately, with the extension of the state of emergency or disaster, we kind of find ourselves in a similar position where we don't exactly know what the right course of law is, where it comes from, and we have competing legal interpretations sort of on all sides of this. Now, hopefully the AG will weigh in at some point in time, or this will be very quietly just dealt with. but I wanted to run down sort of what happened, why, and what that means for you guys. So as I stated, the state of emergency declaration was extended until October 15th, and the extension brought into question the status of some of those executive orders that were issued during that initial period that was set to end on September 15th. Several of those orders have wording in them, including Executive Order 20-59, that includes language that says specifically that this shall remain in effect until the end of the state of emergency declaration or until the order is revoked, whichever is earlier. Now, what's important about that language, sort of the legalness of it, is it provides us with the idea that the goal of this order is to be shorter rather than longer. And again, based off of some of the wording within that order itself, there is a legitimate legal argument to be made that it was set to end on September 15th rather than being extended, because the earlier of the two alternatives of extending the emergency declaration or allowing it to end on September 15th would have been obviously ending on September 15th. Additionally, the governor's office had an opportunity to clarify all of this information for us in Executive Order 20-64, which renewed and reissued several executive orders that were issued during that same time period as Executive Order 20-59. Among them were Executive Order 20-61, 55, 56, 43, and lower than that. So we have orders surrounding 2059 that were reissued as a part of this new executive order issued in the new state of emergency declaration. It was sort of after September 15th into October 15th. Now, noticeably, and we got questions from several school districts, superintendents and board members about sort of what the status was with 2059, because it was conspicuously missing from that list of executive orders that the governor's office had renewed in this new state of emergency declaration. Now, if you ask the governor's office, of course, they will be 100% confident that Executive Order 20-59 is still completely in full force and effect. And if you haven't opted out, again, which the governor's office doesn't believe is a legitimate means for doing those things, if you haven't opted out, you are still held to that standard. So we have competing legal views on these things. So what does that mean for school districts? Well, the first thing that I want to talk to you about is that if you are a district that has followed Executive Order 20-59, there is nothing preventing you from sticking with that same standard. It is your decision to set what restrictions you deem are reasonably necessary to protect and provide a safe learning and working environment for your staff and students. However, if you are a district that has opted out of 20-59, whether it be by yourself or in conjunction with your county, and you have taken a different stance, maybe a lesser stance, maybe not requiring face masks the entire time, or maybe taking temperature checks once a day instead of after lunch as well. If you are doing something different than 20-59, not much has changed for you. However, across the board, again, KSB has been saying this from the beginning, in the absolute very minimum, what you have to do is follow the guidance and the restrictions placed upon the county and the school by the local county health agent. Now, I know that there are some districts where the county health agent has delegated that authority for what school districts are going to do to the school district. in that case, work with your county health agent, because your county health agent is going to be the one that is going to shut down the school if you aren't following the restrictions that they've placed upon you, or you have an outbreak, cluster outbreak that will, they'll shut down that building so that we can prevent further spread. Just this week, there have been 3 districts that have had to move to hybrid, or actually, I believe to complete remote, because of outbreaks. So this is something that we want to take very seriously. Having that relationship with your county health agent is going to be paramount, because having those open lines of communication so you know what is expected of you, and then sort of checking in to see how are you feeling about what we are doing, is going to be very important when it comes time, when those cases do come and those cluster outbreaks do come, how you were going to handle those things. Now, I see we have a question in the chat. Having some issues with face masks, a petition is going around to stop them. What issues will that have with funding, etc.? We could lose several teachers. Okay, so here are the things that you need to consider from a community petition standpoint. The community has no say in those policies. Now, the board can listen to those things, and the board can take that feedback into consideration through public comment, but there is no impetus, there is no legal reason for the board to change its position unless it deems that it should. Now, on the other side of that coin, if you can lose a large number of students who either don't want face masks, or you guys do have face masks, to virtual schoolings or other things like that. And they can withdraw their students. That is a reality that can happen. Personally, from a legal perspective, I would rather deal with lower enrollment than dealing with a lawsuit for a wrongful death or a hostile, an unsafe work environment. That's just me from the legal perspective. I know some superintendents and some board members are saying, oh, well, enrollment is very important, and it is, but I believe that count day was yesterday, so there's some solace in that. Gary, am I right? Was count day yesterday? Excellent, good. So there are some potential drawbacks to maintaining a strong position on mask, or maintaining whatever position you have. But what I can tell you is that you are probably going to make the wrong decision no matter what decision you make. There will always be people who disagree with those decisions. The board has to feel comfortable with where they are, not because they're feeling pressure from teachers, not because they're feeling pressure from communities, not because they're feeling pressure from building administrators. The board itself must be comfortable with the position it's taking and the potential liabilities on either side, or the potential ramifications on either side of what that position sort of implicates, whether it's lower attendance or higher liability for a negligence cause of action. Whatever decision.
Sam, I'd like to emphasize, or have you emphasize, because I hope people caught that, a petition does have potentially some importance to the board because it is information, but there is no legal authority that a petition lends itself to that a board feels like they need to act upon a petition's contents, correct?
Yes, correct. So there is no power in and of itself for the petition to do or to bind the board. However, it is very important to consider information that your community is providing to you with that petition. I do see another question from Claudia. School district making the news for a petition to end quarantine for an elementary school, so these have no real power. That is correct. And this is something that is actually, it's a little bit off topic, but it is worth discussing because I've dealt with several questions this week on this topic. The only power who has the ability to quarantine is going to be a healthcare professional. They are the ones who have the power and the medical ability to diagnose whether a quarantine is needed. Now, you can follow guidelines and self-quarantine if you need, but the only power to enforce a quarantine order comes from the county health agent. So if school districts, you're handing out quarantine orders, you need to reconsider that position. If you've had a close contact with a student, it is not our job to say, hey, quarantine. Our job is to say, you've had close contact. If you have concerns, you can contact county health at this number or contact your primary health physician. It is not our job to determine the health or wellness of a student and deny them access to the school. Now, for teachers, we have a little bit more of an ability to do that because they do not have a constitutional right to be in the building. They are our employees. So if we feel we have a sick employee, go home, you're taking the day. Now, we might have to pay them for that time depending on where the exposure came from or something like that. But for students, we have to be really careful about how quarantine is going down. We want to work with that county health agent to make sure that quarantine orders are going to be enforced. So if there is a quarantine order in place for a student, we do not want to say, hey, come back to the building, we'll take it, don't worry about it. We want to keep the fidelity of the order. Now, that does not mean that we have the ability to quarantine them. We have the ability under your contagious disease policies, we have the ability to turn students away, like actually prevent them from coming into the building. If they have a diagnosis from a healthcare professional, that's going to be the important portion. A healthcare professional. We are not those healthcare professionals. So if we don't have documentation from a primary care physician, from county health, something which indicates that this person should be quarantined, we do not have the authority to quarantine them. All right, so Art, I see a question here. What we can control is to move a class to remote, which should accomplish the quarantine. Yes, absolutely correct. You have the ability, so long as it's been established in board policy, which I hope at this point you all have, to switch to a in-person, hybrid to remote services for your students. That is a way we can effectively quarantine without an order.
Thank you. Angie, I want to thank you for that. And Sam, I also want to mention this because I have also been getting phone calls about petition. You've made it very clear that they really have no authority unless the board chooses to allow it. But I would also say that a petition does not guarantee the petition holder a place on the board agenda. Once again, you need to follow your agreed upon processes and procedures on how items get into the agenda. A petition holder is not guaranteed an agenda placement just because they demand it.
That's a fantastic point. So this is sort of the same thing that we get with public comment and things like that. Just because there's a lot of community support for a position doesn't mean they get to establish themselves in the board's meeting. It is a board meeting. By very definition, it is the meeting of the board, meaning the board controls it, the board controls the agenda and things like that. But as Angie says, it is a communication to the board. It is your community saying, this is important to us. So making decisions concerning those areas of hot topics or of political debate is going to be something that we need to consider. It is not something that boards necessarily must do, but it is something we have to consider. Now, as Angie mentioned, there are methods for removal of board members, recall or ouster processes. Those hardly ever happen, but those are the proper ways that you do those things. A question I was asked is, if we quarantine a class, do they have to wear face masks? that would be up to your individual district to impose. If you're quarantining an entire class, doing sort of a modified quarantine, which is something I've heard more about in past weeks, I would want to do as much as possible to limit potential exposures, even though these are just quarantines and they're not positive cases. But again, that's going to go to your policies on face masks and what your county health agent has advised you.
Any other questions? Sam, do you have anything else for us?
Just know that things are changing. Now, the things that we are very firm on, those things really won't change. And if they do change, it will be major, major news. However, things are in constant flux. New information is being figured out. Other information is being retracted on sort of what is going on concerning wearing masks, not wearing masks. Keep attuned to your districts in your surrounding districts so that you guys know what each other are doing. Having those relationships with other board members and other superintendents is going to be of a huge aid. Art has another question.
Yes.
A district can have a policy that requires face masks regardless of the state or local mandate, correct? Yes, that is correct. You want having the legal authority to do so, or having the support of another entity to do so is going to be vitally important. For staff, absolutely, you can have it. For students, it is a little bit of a nuanced dance there, because again, they have the constitutional right to be at school. So it's going to be a little bit different of a situation for students than teachers. Teachers, you can absolutely require it unless they have a medical condition that would prevent them, because at that point it's discrimination. But for students, it's going to be a little bit more nuanced of a dance. I would highly suggest having the support of your county health agent in enforcing that mandate. Sort of the one fallback of 2059 potentially not being effective anymore is we don't have that to fall back on and say, we're following the governor's order here. You don't have that to protect yourself. And Angie had discussed that a little bit more, Art, if that needs a little bit more.
Any other questions, board members? Sam, do you have any other information you would like to share with our group while we have a captive audience?
Yeah, things are changing. So if you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out to KUSF attorneys. That's what we're here for. And we are always more than welcome and happy to help.
Board members, as a reminder, I will make sure that this PowerPoint and the Lifeline information will be in our member portal. So if you need more information, feel free to access that so that you can benefit your children and your staff potentially in that regard. So with that said, we hope that we'll see you next week. Next week will be the last of the weekly Lunch and Learns. We will have Lunch and Learns that will be on about a monthly basis after that, but we do hope you will come to our last of our inaugural sessions that we are calling our weekly Lunch and Learns, and we will have definitely a timely topic that will benefit you and your board service. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate the time that you spend with us on Wednesday noon. Thank you.